Episode 12. Don't blow cash on stupid shit. How old money equals longevity.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Good morning, good evening, good night, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends all over the planet. I actually have listeners all over the planet. I'm totally psyched that there's actually, that amount of people really engaging after, 2 weeks. So welcome, everyone, to an all-new episode, more or less provocative, on, what is this episode on? Honestly, I spent a lot of time really thinking about what to do with the title, which I came up with based on a discussion I had on a message board about longevity many, many moons ago, and where the question was asked by a lot of the people attending the discussion: how do those royals become so old and stay so relatively fit at that age, right? I don't know. There were a lot of thoughts and ideas that were being relayed and discussed, and a lot of them were complete bullshit. But what did really stick was the fact that it has to do with the wealth, much less with the genes, which I found very interesting. So, it's always said that the gene pool, after, hundreds of years of inbreed, has to be corrupt to a degree where nothing should actually come out. And it was always funny to speak about it that way, and I didn't really give a lot of credit to that. However, the arguments brought forth by a lot of the, quote unquote, researchers that were hanging around there were different and had a lot to do with the money, with the regular health checkups, and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, I have this disgusting level of envy porn that I regularly am, what's the term, exposed to, through Instagram and all of these other vanity channels where essentially the content publishers have nothing better to do than to show off their, quote unquote, wealth, without being responsible about it. And for me, wealth always came with a rather high degree of responsibility in a variety of aspects. So the freedom in a variety of ways that your money bought you, that your wealth bought you, was to be used wisely in a variety of ways. Now, I addressed this in an earlier episode, and am going to go in a lot more detail about how I think that all of these ultra wealthy people, and I'm talking about Zuckerberg and Bezos and Gates and so on and so forth, while all of their altruistic efforts are meaningful to a degree, it's their totalitarian mindset that bothers me about it, right? I think it should be up to society to determine what is important for the world to, or for money being committed to, rather than an individual who read a book about it or has some unfulfilled child fantasies or fetishes about Star Trek and therefore wants to explore the universe. I think the world has enough problems here, so this is more, or all of these visions of exploring space, etc., are of course very interesting and enticing and exciting. But the problem is we got problems much closer to us that we need to solve, at least for my concern, than you know, trying to explore new planets without having any idea of what's on them. Now, you might argue that the entire discovery of the United States by Columbus and his peers, of course, led the world forth, and they were big discoverers and so on and so forth, and that Europe had enough problems of its own. And that's true. That's absolutely true. Look, flipping open a history book, in your 1400s, Europe was going to shit pretty much, and so the entire thing with Columbus discovering the Americas and so on and so forth was probably something reasonable in expanding the world. That being said, the responsibility of financial freedom is, for my understanding, that you really take into account that and I'm talking fuck you money. I'm not talking wealth in a more common sense, but once you reach a degree where you have a significant amount of fuck you money at your disposal, it's good to give back and to become philanthropic in any way, shape, or form. Now, you can do this hands-on. We had discussed this in the episode about servility and leadership, and that the two go hand in hand. But, there are other ways to do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be financial contributions that you make, because a lot of times those are ineffective. And I know this from a personal experience, but that's going to be more of a distant episode that I'm going to go into. Now, why did I choose today as the day to publish this episode? And again, I gave a lot of thought to what I would publish today. And what I noticed going through the episodes that were already published is that the wealth aspect of the person of the three pillars that I always discuss: health, wealth, and happiness. The wealth aspect has, for my understanding, been underserved. And so therefore, I thought that I would do a rather extensive episode, a well-researched episodes. Not that the others aren't, but spend a lot more time on this episode, because I extracted a lot of information back in the day from this discussion that I was mentioning earlier. A few things first, which I kind of outlined on my notepad, is, of course, as the title says, don't blow your money on stupid shit. There's always this saying that we buy stupid shit we don't need with money we don't have, to impress people that we don't give a fuck about, something along those lines. And that's true. While you can drive your red or yellow flashy Ferrari to your posh apartment space sitting on a plot of land that's maybe an acre big, it satisfies your vanity more than anything else. It doesn't serve your health. Of course, real estate is a good investment. A Ferrari may increase in value as well. But the people that I've been in touch with, and I will get to the details more in tomorrow's episode, they were more about not being flashy. Now, of course, they had nice cars, but they were at a level which is very difficult to reach. They had nice cars, they had insanely nice real estate, but they were more about the residual income from owning land, for instance. And their highest luxury, which they always talked about, was time. And the second highest luxury, I don't know if that's even a word, but I'm just going to say it like that. The second highest luxury that they deemed necessary for or valuable for themselves was good food and treating their body right through a reasonable amount of exercise. Now, let me just take one step back. Good food is not your $600 7-course meal in a restaurant. Of course, that's an experience, but it's not necessarily good food. And here's why. You don't know where it's sourced from, and you don't know essentially who worked on it, on the produce, and you don't know who prepared it. And those are quite interesting aspects, which bring us back to the exercise bit, where I'm just going to float the idea. Why not, instead of your house costing $10 million, why not settle for one that is worth $2 million, but has a decent sized garden outside where you plant your own produce? And perhaps you get a hectare or 2 or 3 or 10 hectares of land with a house and essentially start growing your own livestock. Then you know exactly where everything is sourced from. You know that there are, well, only the chemicals and the fertilizers that you put in there. And damn, does it taste good if you actually participate in the work yourself. And I've done that. We've, not to a large extent yet, but we've planted 5 fruit trees in the yard. We've got, I don't know, upwards of probably a dozen berry bushes for blueberries and raspberries and blackberries and whatnot berries. And all of this is going into marmalade or jam or whatever you want to call it. And the fruit is just so fucking tasty that it's just really amazing. And the effort you put in for yourself, for the produce that you make, is of course burning energy, and it's very, very, very good and targeted exercise, better than anything you could get in your local sweatbox, where you have to drive to and pay your membership fees and be around all of these other icky people and so on and so forth. So I don't get it why a lot of people actually don't pursue this kind of ordeal. And if you are at liberty to buy land that is close to you, then why not build a barn to raise cows, cattle, produce your own milk and dairy products, and once the cattle is at a slaughtering age, you have your own meat at your disposal. The same applies for vegetables. Now, if you're not the type of person to do a lot of gardening, then by all means hire a gardener to take care of it. But that's the kind of thing that I mentioned when I started this example, was what's the 8 million for, right? The 8 million difference between having a $2 million house and a $10 million house. Where does it go? It goes towards luxury that is, probably neat to have, nice to have. But from my experience, when I had these aha moments, it was like, okay, what can I do myself? And from my own experience, nothing is more rewarding than, digging a hole and planting a blueberry bush, putting horse shit at the bottom of the pit that you just dug, and witness these plants just go fucking crazy, and giving back so much that is so well tasting and so healthy because you know exactly where the stuff that you're eating is sourced from. And we have the same for a lot of herbs and spices that we can grow in the region here. So pretty much anything that we can grow without a lot of space, we grow ourselves just because we know where it comes from. And it just tastes so fucking good. And me being the cook, you know, just preparing it is just so much more joy than actually, yeah, getting it from a supermarket, not knowing where it's from 100 people before you have probably touched it. And you have to, you know, disinfect it and put vinegar over it to ick, you know. So everything we can source, we grow ourselves. And this isn't hectares we're talking about. This is what 0.3, 0.4 hectares that we're currently doing ourselves, which is a totally different story. That being said, this example was the reason I started with this example was because it was one of the ones mainly discussed in the discussion forum that I mentioned to you earlier. In that it was speaking, there was some kind of person that had been reading all of the biographies and autobiographies of the royals in the United Kingdom, and came to the conclusion that pretty much all of the produce that the queen and so on and her family consume is sourced on their land. Now it goes from fish over cattle, over boar and deer and whatnot, all of the stuff that's running around and being hunted, peasant and or pheasant, or is it peasant? I think it's pheasant. And so all of the food essentially that she has cooked for herself comes from her land and under very strict supervision, is grown and raised under very strict supervision. And that was an interesting point made, that's probably the reason, because there are no pollutants or hardly any pollutants in the food that she consumes or the royal family consumes. And there is no artificial fertilizer that goes into it. And all of the livestock and the plants are taken care of in a very, very, very detailed way and to a detailed protocol. And that was really, really very interesting. So you see, I guess with the title, I tried to explain that, you know, blowing your cash on stupid shit. Yeah, you can buy the house for 10 million, but the house for 2 is gonna be probably as luxurious without a few bells and whistles. And with the other money, buy land, hire professionals to be able to source the best food available for you. And that's going to be one large step towards longevity rather than driving your Ferrari down the road, you know, where you pollute the environment. Well, it's fun, you know. Sorry, I don't want to sound too negative on the fact, but I'm just trying to make a point. You want to enjoy your wealth for as long as fucking possible, right? Otherwise, you don't work for it. And there are a few factors. You know, number one was the food bit, the time bit. I already mentioned that time is, you know, one of the assets that it is pretty much the only asset that you can't get back. You know, if you go broke, you can earn your money back. If you waste time on something, it's gone, you know, and it's not going to get back. So it's about extending your life as long as humanly fucking possible. And that can be done through, you know, good food, and forfeiting maybe one luxury or two in favor of buying a bit of more land and, you know, taking care of your own produce. And another very, very, very important thing, and I know this is not a guy's thing, is that was another argument made about the royal family, that they are obviously taken to a physical exam pretty much every year, and an insanely detailed one. Now, I know your health insurance is probably going to go apeshit if you run to a detailed screening every year, because that's, you know, is going to set you back quite a lot of money. But invest it for yourself, because if you feel anything wrong with your body, it's a good idea to have a physician look at it. Different idea if they find something, because then you want to start evaluating alternative treatments. And I'll get into that in another episode in the future. But it's a good idea to have yourself checked out in minute detail, at least once a year. Once you reach a certain age, it's probably favorable to do that even more frequently. Now, financial freedom also equals more time for natural physical activity. That's what I mentioned that's what I mentioned earlier. And it means that if you have a property and you have an estate and you have land, take care of it yourself. Don't, of course, hire people, but you're going to be in a supervising role, and watch these people, how they actually, these professional people, how they actually deal with the livestock and how they deal with the plants and how they deal with nature and how harmonically this actually pans out. I was really surprised, whenever we have we have our gardening company outfit here, I am always all over them, asking them probably stupid questions about how I can see how the trees are doing, whether they're prospering, whether they're, are they lacking some kind of nutrition? How can I counter those symptoms, and so on and so forth. And while it gets on their nerves, they're quite okay with it because they get very good food. I just, I love to cook. And so they always love to come here because they get good food. And I think one of the compromises they make is just, okay, the dude asks us a lot of stupid questions. It's okay. He, gives us good food, so we're going to deal with it very professionally. And another thing I noticed about doing the work yourself is the amount of exercise that you get out of it. And I'm talking good and pure and natural exercise, using the muscles in your body that you should be using, rather than those you flex at your sweat box, right? And plus, you don't have a lot of nerve-wracking people. If you want to go to the sweat box, do so. If you need people looking at you while you're squatting or doing cardio or whatever, good for you, do it. But also try and do some what I call natural physical activity, which is, just using the muscles you have in your body for activity that the body was meant to do. Boom. Another aspect of financial freedom is less interaction with people, and therefore less exposure to pathogens. And this factor is also very interesting. For the longest time in my life, I didn't hate, that was too much said, it just stressed me, being exposed to people. And the more people, the more stressful, right? It was like every airport was a fucking hellhole to me because, not only do you have the people pretending to be, I don't know how important about, doing their business trips with their suits and their leather bags and their expensive cell phones and so on and so forth. But you also had the people with power, and those people usually had a double-digit IQ and a triple-digit income. And being born and raised in Germany and exposed to a lot of the history, that's a pretty stupid idea. We've been there. You don't want to do that, but that's for the world to decide, not for me. However, what I noticed was whenever I would come back from a project, for instance, for Christmas, or I knew that I would have a bit of downtime, I immediately got sick because I picked up a pathogen somewhere along the way, and you just fucking can't avoid it. You can run around with a mask like we're learning now. But on the other hand, you're just kind of giving your immune system so much of a break that you might as well then just always wear a mask and put yourself in bubble wrap and wash your hands every 10 minutes because you touched something that might contain a pathogen or have a pathogen on it. That being said, the less people you are involved with, the lower the chance of getting infected with something. And if you are only exposed to people that you know quite well, then you kind of get a distance. Now, this brings certain prerequisites with it. You have to have a home where you feel so good that you don't want to leave. And I'm talking about those people who, the funniest of which are those people who go on vacation on alone because they can't afford to go on vacation with their paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, which they live. And I'm in a very lucky position in that I really, really, really love our home. I enjoy being there. I take very good care of it. We did a great job in interior decorating, and it just feels like home. And for me, there is no real reason to leave. And luckily, we have a dog, and the mailman is his class enemy. And so it's not even the mailman that I have to interact with. It's a few neighbors that occasionally walk by with their dogs. We have polite conversation and then they leave. And then we have friends around a lot, friends that we trust, friends that we are, well, friends with at the end of the day. And the circle of people that we are exposed to is fairly slim. We don't visit a lot of social gatherings except for the occasional flea market. We hardly go shopping. We do most of that online. And if we do, it's, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. There's no long exposure to any large amount of people there. Social gatherings like concerts or something is not our cup of tea, so we just avoid that. And that's pretty much another very interesting aspect of financial freedom that you can easily replicate. Now, last but not least, I think the aspect of another aspect of financial freedom is that you just have better access to state-of-the-art medical care, and regular high-quality checkups are something that you can afford because, while in the United Kingdom, for instance, you have the NHS, in Germany you have your normal social healthcare plans that you are in, period. In the US, you have, I always get them mixed up, Medicaid or Medicare or whatever it is, the Obamacare Act. So you have your basic health insurance coverage. And the problem is that it's basic. It's the treatment everybody gets. Nobody has to suffer. That's the idea. But the plan is to live and enjoy your wealth for as long as fucking possible. So therefore, it's upon you to find a medical professional that will, take you by the hand and give you that very detailed screening at least once a year to outline or to search for age-related diseases like dementia or Parkinson's, to search for tumors, which other cancerous developments taking place in your body, which they shouldn't, because if you eat healthy and you avoid stress to a certain degree, you should be good in context to those diseases. That's at least what my doctor says. And I think those are the things that need a little bit of adjustment on a lot of the people that I'm following to actually give you longer access to your wealth. And there you go. Wow, that was kind of like a short ending. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, be responsible with the time that you have. Try to extend the time that you have, the limited time that you have on this planet, as much as you can. Maybe the advice I gave here is interesting. Maybe it isn't. To you, that's for you to decide. In any case, I would really, really, really enjoy your feedback to this episode, as always, to the email address, theverybestpodcastintheworld@gmail.com. And in that sense, I wish you a very long life, and I hope that we hear each other again more or less regularly. Tomorrow's episode is going to be questions for the first time ever, because I got inquiries. I never really hope for it, because this means that I need to talk about myself, which in a more prominent way that I actually like to. Different story. We will be answering, I don't know, probably about half a dozen to a dozen questions that have made it to our email inbox. And until then, until tomorrow, I wish you a good night and a good day, a successful day, if you are in that part of the world listening to it. And I shall hear you again tomorrow. Bye.